Welcome. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Our topic today, Infor presents Tipping Point, Mission Critical Business Applications in the Cloud. We're glad you could join us. I'm Debbie Warren. I'm going to start the discussion. I am joined today by my colleagues, Amul Merchant, Tim Anderson, and getting right to the point, we want to talk about what we're going to accomplish today. Mission critical applications in the cloud. It's new, right? But it can be done. We're going to share with you how we as an organization have done this, how we've leveraged AWS features, and we'll talk about some lessons learned. Prepare for the best, prepare for the worst. But take a moment aside and let's get to know each other a little bit. This is a technical and a business discussion. I know there's probably many, many technical people in this audience. Can I just get a show of hands of all the business folks as well? Great, thanks. So we're going to do an overview of the mission critical applications. We're then going to review how we solved problems to get to our destination where we are right now. We're going to talk about some customer cases, some business cases, so that you get a better feel for how we've gotten there. And we're going to talk about ourselves as an organization and our transformation, our journey from an ERP company to a cloud company, which is who we are today. I'm not sure if many of you know who we are, Infor, but we're a $3 billion global organization. Some people refer to us as the largest startup. We have 73,000 customers globally that we are in the process of moving to the cloud. 13,000 employees, and the third largest business applications provider in the world. But many of you may know us from the AWS ecosystem because of our CEO, Charles Phillips, and the phrase that he's coined, and candidly, I've seen it on a few shirts this week. Friends don't let friends build data centers. Charles stood on stage at the AWS Summit about 18 months ago and said, we don't want to be in the data center business. We trust AWS, and we are going to go all in, we coined that as well, with AWS. And that is how we've come to be where we are 18 months later, by leveraging and relying on AWS. We are the world's first and largest industry cloud company. Just a few of our cloud credentials I'd like to call attention to is we have 45 million users in the cloud and growing. Obviously, this information is static, right? We have 2,800 companies in the cloud. But with the recent acquisition, that number has jumped over 1,000. But most of this is organic growth. We have Infor customers that come from all different industries, from healthcare to public sector to various types of manufacturing and different SICs. And just a few sample customers, you can see their logo. You may recognize some of them. For all we know, one of you sitting in the audience is a member of those organizations. So that's a little bit about us, just to set the stage. And we'll talk about the evolution and how we got here. So until recently, mission-critical applications have not been cloud-ready, right? Options have been pretty limited to point solutions from multiple vendors, requiring extensive integration, or the applications lacked the deep, unique, functional requirements that our customers have had. We started with custom apps. We moved over to point solutions like HCM, human capital management, that is, CRM, customer relationship management, and SFA, Salesforce automation. But they were point solutions, and then again, still needed to be integrated. We moved forward, and we had now the next stage in our evolution. Our customers went to the cloud, full ERP in the cloud, but they still lacked that industry functionality that they needed. And that is how we decided to move into that space as the largest industry cloud company. We're not going to look at all these features, but just an example, these are sample features in our on-prem software. And it differs. It differs by industry. This is just discrete manufacturing, and if you can see the chart, you'll see there's different requirements for aero and defense, different requirements for industrial manufacturing, auto, high-tech, the list is endless, right? So we took these features, these feature and functionality, and we added efficiencies using the modern cloud technology, included social collaboration, process improvement, and analytics. And we created beautiful, beautiful, cloud-ready solutions delivered as a service with mobile in mind. So how did we get to that place? And what does it look like? These are what our applications look like today. If you look into the far right, you'll see the core ERP that's in our cloud solution. You'll see the features that an A&D or aero and defense customer would want to see as part of their best practices and industry requirements. We built in business processes by way of IAs, or implementation accelerators as we call them. We added social collaboration, and with the intention of collaboration and mobile. But we wanted to scale this, and we needed to invest in ourselves because our goal was not just one industry cloud suite, but many. So today we have 13 industry cloud suites, 3 on their way, and we continue to develop. And our mission was to build beautiful business applications with last mile functionality and scientific insights so that our customers would have the most intuitive user experience. So to fulfill our strategy, what we needed to do is invest in ourselves and transform ourselves as we moved from a traditional ERP company to a cloud company. We created new business units, new lines of business in our own organization. H&L you see on the far left, that's Hook and Loop. Hook and Loop, a new creative agency within Infor. Their sole mission was to create user experiences, mobile experiences, standardization for all of our solutions. They're based in New York City, where we knew we could tap into the creative talent that resided in New York. Likewise, we built another business unit, the Dynamic Science Labs, another new internal organization. And here, they were focused on machine learning and big data analytics so that we could use these capabilities and learn from the folks in the Dynamic Science Lab and create their findings and instill them in our solutions. It's by no coincidence that Dynamic Science Labs is based in Cambridge, right by MIT. And finally, we created Infor Labs, comprised of a number of different business units. DevOps, I'm sure you're all familiar with the term DevOps, right? Reference architecture, where we keep our documentation. Our cloud operations unit, where in cloud ops, we provision our cloud customers, and cloud ops team takes care of the daily care and feed of our cloud customers. We incorporated the use of an information security office led by an information security officer. We created a benchmark center so that we could continually review our own solutions and optimize. Many of the features that we created, many of the solutions we created, we did because of the capabilities within AWS. We've solved many challenges because of that, and it all came from Infor Labs. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Amol, who's going to talk to you specifically about some of the technical challenges that we had to overcome as part of our journey.
All right, thanks. Thanks, Debbie. So I'm responsible for the cloud architecture and DevOps organization within Infor. So what Debbie covered is that Infor has been in the cloud business for a long time. We've been offering cloud solutions for well over 10 years. We have many solutions, enterprise solutions in cloud, 45 million users accessing the applications from 90+ countries. We have maintained a very high uptime, 99.9% historically. And so we've been in the cloud business for a long time and offering enterprise applications. So what we want to do as part of this section was to share our knowledge that we have gained in offering enterprise applications, building enterprise applications, and what does it take to offer enterprise application in a SaaS model, and with the kind of service that the customers expect from their line of business critical applications. So if for example, not that the Facebook goes down, but Facebook going down for 5 minutes isn't going to stop anybody from receiving goods in the factory or stop a manufacturing line. But when an ERP software goes down and it's a critical line of business, you bring the business to a halt. So it takes a lot of considerations from the way you build applications, the way you deploy applications, the way you manage applications to offer enterprise applications in the cloud. So that's what I'm going to cover in this section. So the very first thing is, as you're building applications in the cloud, the things you need to pay attention to the architecture of the application, right? So I'm not going to cover each one of these, but as Infor was bringing cloud applications, enterprise applications to the cloud, we established a certain base criteria by which we will measure whether an application is ready to be available in the cloud. So Infor does not want to bring any application, an enterprise application in the cloud that isn't ready for the cloud, right? So it will cause serious damage to people's business as well as to our reputation. So these are some of the criteria that we established as a base criteria. Now every application, Infor is a company that grew out of acquisition, so we don't have the liberty of having a single platform that we need to build features on. So we needed to make sure that every application that we were bringing to the cloud and was based on a different architecture met certain basic criteria that would make a reliable offering from the Infor cloud, right? So the application obviously has to be multi-tenant, and that, there's general definitions of what multi-tenant means: no customer being able to see other customers' data, no customer being able to impact another customer's experience, and so on and so forth. So there's a set of criteria that goes into each one of them to say, what does multi-tenancy mean? And is the application really multi-tenant? From a scaling perspective and using auto-scaling, so we look at the application at the lowest level and the lowest component, and then evaluate whether that application that component can scale horizontally. So you don't want to have components that scale vertically, because at some point you're going to hit the limit of number of processors and memory, even though today Amazon announced a 1 terabyte instance. That's not necessarily that you should jump up and start consuming all that memory. So we try to optimize our applications for scalability at the smallest level and make sure that at the lowest component level, they are horizontally scalable and not vertically scalable. The exception being, to some extent, the database. But even in database, in many applications, you have a tenant-specific database. So those tenant databases can be deployed on multiple database servers, while the app server, all the components on the app server which are shared, they can scale horizontally. So same thing with, we wanted to make sure that the application was highly available and could be monitored at the lowest level, right? So, again, we break the application down to the lowest level, define what kind of deep health checks we can do for that component, work with the application team to develop those health checks, incorporate those health checks into the tools that we use so that we can detect if anything goes wrong. Now, with the auto-scaling and with the deep health checks using Amazon ELB, most of the problems that occur in the cloud are automatically corrected by the automation. We don't want our ops person to wake up in the middle of the night and have to go and log into the system and start preparing stuff, simply because that's not a good model, and it also causes outages, which is not desirable for our customers. So from a monitoring as well as from health checks, we want the system to be able to detect problems before the customers ever realize that there is a problem, in most cases, self-correct it, and in cases if it cannot self-correct, we should be able to know it before the customer calls Infor and lets us know that there's a problem. There's nothing more irritating than having a customer having to call their SaaS provider and say, you have a problem, did you not know about it, right? So we don't want to be in that position, and for that reason, we work with the application team to build deep health checks into the application. So there are many other criteria. I don't intend to walk through each one of these, but just to suffice it to say, as you bring enterprise applications to the cloud, you need to evaluate at least for these criteria, these basic criteria, to make sure that they meet and exceed these criteria to be called ready for offering a SaaS application in the cloud. So once you have an application that's been properly architected for multi-tenant cloud, we need to think about how you will deploy that application in the cloud. So as Debbie pointed out, we signed a strategic partnership with Amazon. So all our cloud applications today run on Amazon. So we're not trying to divvy it up and run some on some other cloud platform. So that's our platform of choice. As you know, Amazon is divided into regions and availability zones and then CDN points. On top of that, Amazon has a number of services, and I'm pretty sure we'll run out of space if we add some more services that were offered today. But we consume, for our applications, a lot of our applications natively consume a lot of these Amazon services. But they don't directly consume those services. What Infor has done is they have built a set of base services that almost every application needs, like FTP, outbound email, or things like those base services using Amazon services, which then these base services are consumed by the Infor applications, right? So an enterprise asset management application or an HCM application will consume the base services that our cloud team has built on top, leveraging the AWS services. And then the cloud suites that Debbie talked about, they are in turn consume the application. So the cloud suites are made by industry-specific, rich applications, and the collection of those applications make up the cloud suites that Debbie talked about, right? So on top of that, we have our own infrastructure for bringing it all together, these applications together, as well as integrating these applications, either in the front end through what we call as Infor Mingle, and through back end through our data integration layer. So now that we have defined how an application should be architected, and generally at a very high level, how should you consider deploying your applications in the Amazon by building some base services on top of Amazon services and then deploying your application. The next question is, how do you deploy your application? What's your deployment architecture should look like so that when systems fail, and systems will fail in the cloud all the time, that's a known fact, and that's something that's been told by Amazon multiple times. Well, how should you deploy your applications in order to not have outages when a customer or when a system fails? So as a standard practice, Infor will deploy all their applications across 3 availability zones. Everything except the database server. If it's a database server, is a relational database, they're all active deployments, so it's not passive. So app server and each of the components that we talked about for health checks as well as for scaling, each of those components gets deployed in the multiple availability zones. And then the database server, if we are using, let's say, for example, SQL Server, we'll use the SQL Server features like always on. So one of the database servers in the availability zone will be active, will be receiving all the requests, and all the other database servers in the other availability zones will be passive, but will be synchronously replicated so that there's no data loss for the customers. Enterprise customers cannot afford to lose data just because one of the machines went down. So this is a standard deployment architecture that we follow for deploying all applications in Infor Cloud. We have also, as I mentioned, we've invested a lot of money in some of these monitoring tools in the cloud. So all these partner products for monitoring as well as from security perspective. So for example, we use Sumo Logic. We want to bring all the logs from all the application, expose it as a dashboard, and set alerts. So if anything, we notice any error information in the logs, we can parse it through regular expressions and send the notification to the ops person. So Infor has invested a lot of money in these tools simply because, again, we want to know about the problems before the customer ever calls us. And if there is a problem that hasn't been fixed through automation, automatically rectified, then we want to have the tools to be able to get to the root cause as quickly as possible, right? So tools like Dynatrace is an application performance management tool that we deploy along with the application. So when a customer calls and says, I'm experiencing a very high response time, we can immediately get to the bottom and do a root cause analysis and identify what's causing that slow response times. So having deployed an application in the cloud on an infrastructure that has been properly designed, the very next thing that enterprise customers care about is security. And Infor has, as Debbie mentioned, is created an office, information security office led by an information security officer. And we take security very seriously. And I suggest if you're bringing enterprise application to the cloud, you do a very deep analysis of security. There is some misconception for many people that just because you deployed your application on Amazon, everything is good. Everything is going to be secure. That's not true. It's a shared responsibility model. So you deploy your application, the Amazon takes care of security up to the hypervisor level, and then everything above the hypervisor level is our responsibility, as in whoever deploys the application on the Amazon infrastructure. So Infor has a lot of activities that are happening as part of the security. We start with this application security. As we are building applications, we make it a point to run application code scans through automated build processes. We do penetration test and application vulnerability test on an ongoing basis. So security should not be an afterthought for application development teams. When you're bringing an enterprise application, it needs to be baked into the process. What we find is when an application has not considered security and brings an application that is ready from all the other aspects that I had put together for evaluating the readiness of the application, but if the security was not paid attention to, the application is going to stall, is not going to come to the cloud. So security for us is very important, and we put a brake on an application that hasn't paid attention to security and do not bring it to Infor Cloud. And these are some of the various factors that we take. These are some of the activities that we do for evaluating security readiness of the application. One of the most interesting things over here is as part of the Information Security Office, what we have is a small team of certified ethical hackers. So their job is to day in, day out, try to hack the systems to figure out if there is any vulnerability that has not been detected by automation tools. So we use a lot of automation tools for detecting vulnerability and penetration that run on a scheduled basis. But there are things that an automation tool can miss. And so these hackers are manually trying to break into the application and detect if there are any vulnerabilities in the application. Additionally, we have a lot of certifications from reputed organizations that we are able to, information that we are able to provide to our customers as they need in order to assure them that we are certified and following the best practices in the cloud. So one of the things that will help in the security, so if you paid attention to security, one of the things that will help that case would be automation. So as you think about deploying your applications, let's say the applications are properly designed, your infrastructure design is good, you paid attention to the security, but when you try to deploy the infrastructure, somebody sitting in front of a management console or trying to do things manually, things are going to break. Something's going to happen that is going to bring an error element into it. So what we do is we completely have automated the process of deploying infrastructure. We have automated the deployment of applications, and we have automated the complete application lifecycle. So what does that mean? So when we need to create a VPC in AWS and need to create security groups, we need to create NAT instances, we need to create subnets, all that is automated. All that is written out as code, it is reviewed, and then it's deployed just like any other code. So it's the advantage of building an automation, you write it as code, therefore it's reviewed, it's documented, it's repeatable across the world, so we can deploy in any region in the world in less than 2 hours. So the application, the automation brings its benefits that it's a consistent environment, doesn't matter how many times you deploy it and where you deploy it. The other advantage is security. So if you don't have your ops and everybody trying to do things manually, that brings an element of security. So the Infor's goal is that the ops person should not be physically on the machine, and everything should be done on the automation, and the accessing the physical machine is restricted to what we call as a break-the-glass scenario. So if you're thinking of bringing enterprise applications to the cloud, strongly suggest automating end-to-end processes rather than trying to do things manually. Another aspect of enterprise application, which is often ignored and comes as an afterthought, is on-premise world, extensibility of the applications is done in a different way, or historically has been done in a different way than what is possible in the cloud. Extending applications in the cloud does not mean you can write source code and add the source code to the server, because you have thousands of customers on the same infrastructure. And a customer A's badly written source code modification can impact customer B. So extensibility has to be something that is baked into the framework of the applications, and has to be something that is done through the front end of the application, and is something that is upgradable. So if extensibility is going to be an afterthought in the application and isn't something that is baked into the framework and thought of from day one, it's going to be an expensive retrofit, and it's going to look like a patchwork. So this is an important consideration for us who are providers of enterprise application to our customers. We have to carefully consider what's the extensibility of the application. Just because a customer is consuming an application in the cloud does not mean the customer does not intend to modify the application. As a provider of the enterprise application, it's our responsibility to provide mechanisms for extending the application which are upgradable and which are user-friendly, rather than which require some modification of the code or getting under the hood. The other aspect, which is very important when providing enterprise applications in the cloud, is enterprise applications need to integrate with lots of other systems, whether they are on-prem or other systems in the cloud or other systems in the same cloud. So what Info did was they built their own enterprise service bus called Iron. It does more than just traffic routing, but in addition to doing routing and rules-based routing, it also does transformation of the messages. But all the Info applications that are deployed in the cloud talk to each other through a well-defined interface, what we call as BODs, Business Object Document. In addition, as transactions are being created within the enterprise applications, they all route to this, what we call as Iron, and Iron will look at the routing rules and route it to other applications, whether those applications are within Info, behind the Info firewall, or to third-party applications. In addition, the data is sent to what we call as a business vault, and the data is stored there, that the analytics application can run against this business vault and provide BI, business intelligence information to the customers. One of the important aspects, as I talked about, is hybrid deployment. So any integration mechanism that you expose in your cloud environment needs to support hybrid deployments. Not all applications are going to become cloud-enabled on the same day. So you need to provide mechanisms to how to connect back to the applications which are running on-premise. Obviously, you cannot open VPN tunnels in a good cloud environment. You cannot allow low socket-level connections. So the integrations in the cloud are to be treated differently, or should be considered differently than what you considered when the applications are all running behind your corporate firewall. So the integrations with the applications in the cloud should be done through web technologies like SOAP, REST messages, SFTP, SQS. So those are cloud-friendly technologies, rather than trying to open sockets or creating opening holes in the firewall, right? In addition to all these other requirements, the other requirements that you need to pay attention is how are the customers going to be able to run analytics? A continuation of what I said earlier is you got to be able to bring data from your disparate systems and be able to provide still analytics. Analytics is a very important aspect of the enterprise applications. It's just not analytics for the enterprise application that is running. You got to be able to bring data from multiple systems and be able to run analytics on top of that. InfoDEPM is an enterprise application that we have for providing analytics that span multiple applications. Another challenge that we faced, which may or may not apply to you, is localization. So we as our users access our applications from 90+ countries. So there are different tax rules in those countries. There are different regulations. So what we built is, instead of building that logic in each of those applications, we have close to 40+ applications in our cloud. Instead of building this regional taxation rules and governance rules into each of the application, we extracted that and built a separate component called locally. And we connect this locally component to all the ERPs so that this common component can provide all the tax regulation and tax calculations back to ERP. So this is a recent acquisition by Infor. It's called GT Nexus. And I wanted to talk a little bit about it simply because it's a little bit different shift than what has been traditionally, you just focus on the ERP that is your ERP, and the ERP is very good at providing data that is behind your firewall or within your organization. But less consideration has been paid to how to integrate systems with other systems that you collaborate with. Your business is not necessarily something that is very isolated. You typically do business with partners, with vendors, with sellers. So the GT Nexus, what GT Nexus does is it connects, it creates the collaboration between your, it widens the horizons, and you are able to collaborate with your suppliers in a larger ecosystem. You're able to see into your customers' systems to be able, whatever data is relevant to be exposed, you're able to get that, so you get a bigger visibility and you're able to plan better. It's something similar to what the automotive industry have already done. So if you look at a car manufacturer has typically very good visibility into a supplier's ERP system when its part is going to be shipped, so they're all integrated system. But that, other than the automotive use case, this paradigm has been ignored. So GT Nexus and a recent acquisition by Infor bridges that, and it expands the boundary, and you're able to view into your larger ecosystem of vendors, suppliers. And this is something that we think will help us provide a better experience and a better use case for our customers. All right, so having talked about getting our applications ready, getting infrastructure ready, how to deploy your applications, and security and automation and other aspects, all the aspects that go into providing a good seamless experience for the customers who are consuming enterprise applications which are line of business, critical line of business applications. Let's talk about, Tim is going to talk about some of the customers that actually use this. So this is not theory, and he's going to walk through some of these customers and the use cases.
Okay, great, thank you. So it's good to be with you this afternoon. Like Amol said, I'm going to try and give you a little bit of an experience of actually where the rubber meets the road with all of this. You heard from Debbie a little bit about Infor's industry vertical focus and some of the momentum that we have in regard to converting our existing customer set and adding net new customers, of course, but converting our existing customer set to the cloud. And we've now just heard from Amol about some of the architectural and operational challenges associated with that task, and how we're solving for them, or how we've solved them, and how we continue to solve for them as things evolve over time. One thing that we've certainly learned is that this is not a stationary target. The industry and regulations and compliance is constantly moving, and so as a service provider, we need to be moving with it, and we have a great team assembled to kind of keep track of the various parts that we need to keep track of. But at the individual customer level is where the rubber actually meets the road. And so I want to walk through a couple of different customer examples and help you understand, or help you see where we've been able to do that, and kind of what challenges we've been able to address in that regard. So Debbie talked a little bit about, or showed some statistics earlier about our customer base globally, and including non-cloud customers. And across that customer base, we have an industry-specific focus. So this is our customer base. So this slide represents our customer base. It's a diverse base, a bunch of diverse industries. We've had a high degree of success in each of those industries, as you can see by some of the statistics that are up there. And this really represents our immediate pool for cloud success. This is where we're really focusing. Of course, again, like we have customers, or we have salespeople that are going out and attempting to sell to new customers, and we want as many of those as we can. We literally have thousands of customers in on-premise deployments that we're going out and selling into, and really trying to help see the value of moving their existing implementations to the cloud. So, to get into a couple of these specific customer stories, I want to first talk about a company called Boskalis. This is not a company that that is a widely recognized name, but They're a maritime civil engineering company, but they're more than just civil engineering. They're actually an operations company as well, and they're a cloud company. You might remember 3 years ago there was a cruise liner named the Costa Concordia that went aground just off of Italy, or off the shore of Italy. Boskalis sort of became the go-to company for uprighting that ship and transporting it back to dock so that it could be salvaged. They do that kind of thing. They're involved with maritime construction. They're involved with transportation of oil rigs, and they operate the world's largest fleet of dredging equipment. So they're a very diverse organization, and with that diversity comes a lot of large logistical challenges associated with the projects that they undertake. They have a huge asset management challenges, as you might expect from a company that's operating around the world and in all of those various industries. And up until their move to the cloud, they managed all of that business with local or regional implementations of software that weren't connected, that didn't communicate. And so by moving, and so they made a decision approximately 2 years ago to move to the cloud. They moved their core business applications into the cloud as a way to consolidate all of that, those disparate or separated systems. And they were able to do that successfully, and they saw that as a way to sort of streamline some of their operations and become more effective at managing their assets. And that's exactly what they've done. Their move to the cloud has been very successful. In fact, Boskalis senior executives have become somewhat of a promotional machine for us, which we really appreciate. And so they're my first example of a successful move to the cloud customer. The second customer that I wanted to share with you is a customer called TrueSim, or True Simulation and Training, but we call them TrueSim. TrueSim is a relatively new company. You could call them a startup. They were formed out of by taking a couple of different divisions out of a larger organization called Textron. And what TrueSim does is they create simulation machinery, software and machinery for specifically for training pilots and aero maintenance engineers, right? An industry where on-the-job training and learning as you go can be very risky and very expensive, right? So that's what they do. And because they're a new company, sort of starting from the ground up, they were able to start in the cloud with a product that we have, one of the products that Debbie identified earlier, our Aerospace and Defense Cloud Suite product. That Aerospace and Defense Suite, the Aerospace and Defense Cloud Suite product is ITAR compliant, due not in no small part because of the security mechanisms that we have through the AWS GovCloud region. So there's some additional leverage that we've been able to gain from that GovCloud region. They needed a platform that, because they're a startup, they needed a platform that they could start small on with a minimal amount of initial investment, but that would scale. They have some ambitious goals relating to growth over a 5-year period. So they wanted something that would work for them, that they could start out small on and grow. And the cloud is perfect for that. We have the ability to start them out with just what they need now, and as many other presentations have sort of indicated over the last couple of days, pay for what they need now, and then as they grow as an organization, we can increase the scope or the scale of the applications that we're running for them. So the cloud checked a lot of TrueSim's requirements for a deployment option. The third customer that I wanted to talk about is WellSpan Health System. And like a lot of US major health systems, WellSpan has two significant challenges. They have an active M&A strategy, so they're looking to grow by acquisition of other hospitals or other health systems, and they're also feeling incredible pressure to reduce and manage their costs, partially due to the Affordable Care Act, partially due to just the fact that that's par for the course within the healthcare industry. So WellSpan was a legacy Infor customer, a long time legacy Infor customer that was facing a major upgrade event. They had this upgrade looming that involved sort of a major services event, but also involved some hardware refresh. And what they were able to do by making the decision to move to the cloud was they were able to avoid that hardware refresh event, avoid that major capital expenditure, and also combine the upgrade activity that they were anticipating, that they had planned for, with their move into the cloud. So they sort of killed two birds with one stone from a services and testing and integration perspective. By doing this, by making this decision to move their applications to the cloud, WellSpan has been able to avoid that, like I said, that significant capital expense, and they've been able to consolidate those activities, and they're experiencing and seeing a significant return on investment increase because of that decision. Right. The last customer that I want to talk about is J.R. Watkins, and this is a name that probably most of you recognize. Right? J.R. Watkins is almost 150 years old as an organization. Traditionally, they've been direct sales. The direct sales model is not in recent years not been working very well for them, and so they've undergone a business transformation where they're now moving more to a retail delivery model, and their products are being distributed in large retail stores like Walmart. Their challenge in all of this and what they used the cloud to address was that change in business model. Their systems that they had that were supporting the old model weren't able to adjust as they moved toward a retail-based model. So they needed something different, and so they chose and they looked at one of our food and beverage cloud suite product to address some of those changes that were needed, and they've been able to do that. And what's nice and what a lot of our customers see is that in addition to kind of the software changes and the functionality changes, when they embarked on this project to migrate their systems and change their core business processing to the cloud, they found that within their organization, their individual business units got enthusiastic about making business process changes as well. And that's something that we see with a lot of our customers. It's not just about replacing one software with another software. It's not just about moving infrastructure from on-premise to the cloud, but during that process, there are opportunities to make business changes and transform how those individual business units operate. So I've covered these 4 examples, and that's all the time and all the customers that I wanted to cover. And what I've hoped that you've seen is in these success stories with customers moving to the cloud are customers that have been able to consolidate their global operations, facilitate rapid growth, manage and reduce their costs, and realign their operations in support of changes in their business model. But what I also hope that you've been able to see is that you don't have to be a tech startup for cloud to make sense to you. And a lot of the messaging that I've heard in the last few days is kind of been focused that way. You don't have to be a tech startup. None of those companies, with the possible exception of TrueSim, are tech startup companies. These are well-established, large organizations in various industries that have been able to take advantage of a move to the cloud. You don't have to have thousands of servers in tens of data centers and undergo a large consolidation effort for moving to the cloud to make sense to you. You can start small and as Amul's described, take on a hybrid approach to begin with, where you move some of what you have into the cloud and kind of test things out, and then over time continue to move items or to move your processing into the cloud as it makes sense for you and for your organization. Finally, I hope that you've seen the transformation that Infor has gone through as a customer in relation to the things that Debbie and Amul have shared with you. We've gone through this process, as Amul stated at the start of his presentation. We've gone through this process over a long period of time. We've been doing cloud-based applications since before cloud was really cloud. But we've been running and managing applications in that fashion for a long time. But it's only just been in the last 3 years where we've established this or taken this all-in primary focus in the cloud as an organization, and we've transformed, and a lot of things have really changed within our own organization to support that strategy ourselves. So I thank you for your attention and for your time this afternoon. I'll turn the time back over to Debbie for sort of a final closeout. What do we do next? Steps, Q&A kind of thing, and we'll be available afterwards for questions if you have them. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So we talked a little bit about Infor transformation early on, and transformation as a customer of self, because we are a customer of Amazon as much as we are a partner. Noah and Will talked about lessons learned, and we talked about how we needed to reinvent our business as we moved from an ERP company to a cloud company. We've had cultural changes. We've had changes that we've had to make within, the new business units that we talked about earlier with our hook and loop and dynamic science labs, but it filters down to the rest of the organization. It filters down to the sales level, to the delivery models that we look at, and then, of course, to our customer support. That goes beyond our cloud operations. But it's been a great journey. I mean, this latest journey is only 18 months old since we've been all in with AWS, and we have huge wins. We are the world's largest industry cloud company. We're the visionary world leader. But what we want to take the time now is to share what we've been through with a Q&A and see how we can help you get to the next level in your organizations. You don't all come from technology companies. You can be privately held and still want to be moving your own internal business applications to the cloud. So if there's anything that we can do to answer your questions in the time allotted, this would be good. Thank you.